Hi, I'm Kunal Jathal, and it took me 30 minutes today to decide between ordering a taco or a burrito bowl.
Hi, I'm Matt Valerio. I'm 41 years old, and I've high-fived Corey Feldman and shaken hands with Ice Cube.
So, Matt, first of all, thanks a lot for doing this. The universe, I feel, is sometimes a bit of a troll because it presents opportunities to you so closely, yet they are so elusive. And I think this is a great example of that, where like we work in the same space,
Yeah, often back to back.
often back to back. And the studio that we're recording this at is also in the same space, in
Yeah.
the same building that we work at. And getting you here in the studio to just have a conversation, and we've had many conversations, it's been a bit of a logistical adventure.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the reasons that I was really excited to talk to you was because you're very open with your past relationship with alcohol.
Mhm. Right.
Like you speak about it in a very like as a matter of fact way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of that because I think that represents the normalization,
Sure.
right, of what are ultimately very difficult and very private and very personal, but also very human experiences.
Mhm.
So I thought there was an opportunity to maybe ask you about your personal experience and journey with booze,
Mhm.
how you got into it, and then I guess maybe also like why you were doing it. And then, yeah, what your journey was in starting to take steps to transcend it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it came from the lifestyle I was living, being a musician, having the anxieties and insecurities that I have. The alcohol helped to deal with those anxieties. If I was nervous before we performed, I'd have 2 beers. Usually not more than that, but that was enough to take the edge off. And it would make me a lot less nervous getting in front of people. And then once you're doing that every night when you're on tour and performing for a month straight with like 2 days off, you start to develop habits, and soon like you start to develop that tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 beers isn't enough. Like you're doing 2 beers and a whiskey, 2 beers and 2 whiskeys. Like it just started to kind of snowball a little bit. And I started using alcohol as a crutch when it came to my social anxiety, because like I loved to perform because I just love sharing the joy of music and art with people. And if I can help provide that for them as something that I'm making with my friends, that brings me a lot of joy too. It's just like the act of getting out there that was the hardest for me. And, when I started performing less and started DJing more, I would need to get pretty drunk as I DJ'd just to be able to like deal with the nerves of like I'd physically be shaking. Like when you're trying to put a needle on a record and you're shaking like from anxiety,
Right.
like you want to do something that's going to numb that. So then you start drinking more. And then all of a sudden, like you're not remembering the end of the night when you got paid by the venue, and like you just start to lose track of some things,
Mm-hmm.
But it helped me be able to like talk to people, because I've never been the type of person that will go out to bars and like try to pick up women or anything like that. Like I'm not outgoing in that sense. I don't have that confidence. I don't, it was just the social lubricant,
Mm-hmm.
really. But then once it started to be something that I would do every time my wife would go out of town, like I would raid the liquor cabinet and just drink a ridiculous amount. Like, if my daughter was at my mother-in-law's house or something like that, and I wouldn't get super drunk and like wallow in my sadness. If anything, the drinking numbed the intrusive thoughts and everything. So like I'd be happy. Like I was like a happy solo drinker.
But wait, so this was happening now. You were just at home, and let's say your wife's on vacation.
Mhm.
This isn't a social setting anymore, right?
Right.
Like before, you said you were nervous to be DJing in front of all these people and your hands were shaking, so you would drink so you could put a needle on a record.
Mhm.
But how did you get from there to wanting to drink at home where like there's no one?
I think it was just having developed the habit of being able to just feel good
Mm.
just by consuming alcohol. It
Mm.
just, if I had a long day at work, not even a bad day, but just a long day where I just wanted to mentally unwind at the end of the day, I'd get a little thing of whiskey or whatever and like think that that was going to be it.
Mm.
And like I'd get a little buzz from that and then like be like, maybe I'll go get a little bit more. I would drink, I'd be hungover the next day. then I would get the impending doom anxiety feelings. It would just heighten my anxiety in general. And so then I would drink the next night to kind of calm that impending doom feeling.
So you were drinking because you had anxiety, but then the aftermath of drinking just actually exacerbated your anxiety. So then you would drink more to push that anxiety down. And then it becomes this addiction to a sensation.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly you saying that I became addicted to the feeling or the sensation. That's exactly true, because like I was just like, well, I know a surefire way to feel good, at least temporarily, is to do this,
Yeah.
and because again, it would spark my happy thoughts. It quieted some of the dark stuff and brought the happy stuff up. There's something to be said about like if you need that to get through your days, like you need to start figuring out better ways to be happy in your regular life. And I think that's like when I switched around my priorities and started like really putting a lot more emphasis on like wanting to be there and be a good dad and everything like that. Like I shifted my priorities and just like really put all my energy into that.
Hmm.
And that gives me joy. I mean, as much as my
Mhm.
daughter stresses me out sometimes, like it's amazing.
Mhm.
Like seeing, like just looking at her sometimes, I'm just like, we made her. That is weird and incredible. It's a feeling that is like, I'm sure every parent describes it, but it's like, it's so hard to really explain to anyone until you like see it and like feel it. And you start to see your own traits in the kid and they start to say things that are like funny and just, I mean, when my daughter said the other night, like when I asked her if she had is that a plate of olives that you have? And she's like, yeah, and I'm going to eat all of them. And I was just like, oh, you're making dad jokes. You're making me proud. But it's like when they have their own personality like that, it's just like, that brings you joy.
Mhm.
And just looking at her and just like in awe at like her existence. And like, there's something about it. I'm like, oh, right. I'm a dad and I'm her dad.
Mm.
And there are times that I'm just like, I can't believe that I'm her dad. Like
Mhm.
nobody else gets to be her dad. I'm her dad. Like that's amazing. I get to be the dad to this kid because she's awesome.
Honestly, I think we're hitting the nail smack on the head when we almost unintentionally stumbled into this conversation about your intense love for your daughter. And we stumbled into it on the heels of this conversation about alcohol and like addiction to a sensation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And about basically it's wanting to feel good and you kind of don't feel that way. And so you search for that feeling in things,
Mm-hmm.
in substances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of this guy, Johan Hari?
I haven't. No.
So, to be completely honest, I don't know a lot about him either, but he has this TED talk. I think it's on the nature of addiction.
Okay.
And he talks about how the opposite of addiction is connection.
Okay.
There was this experiment that was run on addiction. Basically, they put this rat in like a cage and I think there were two sources of nutrition for it. There was like a little tank of regular water, and then there was a tank of water laced with, I want to say, heroin,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some sort of drug. And basically, the rat, I guess, tried both liquids, and then eventually it was drinking more of the heroin laced water and kept drinking that water till it overdosed and died. And so the conclusion seemed pretty straightforward, like, okay, yeah, heroin is addictive, and it's a one-dimensional deduction that they basically went away with from this experiment on addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, this experiment was reevaluated. And some guy, presumably a scientist of some sort, he was like, well, let's think about it. This rat was just alone in this cage with like nothing to do, no one else to hang out with. Maybe we should kind of repurpose this experiment a little bit. So then they built this kind of like rat utopia, and they had these rats and they had these little like exercise, wheels
Sure.
that I guess rats like to run on. And there were female rats too, so that the rats could mate
Mm-hmm.
and have all their like sexual urges fulfilled and so on and so forth. And they had lots of other food and cheese and whatever, the stuff that rats love, right? and the same 2 tanks of heroin laced water and regular water. Guess what? Heroin laced water practically untouched. So when we talk about addiction, we're talking about addiction to a sensation,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that you described as feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
I would go so far as to venture calling that feeling the bedrock of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
As human beings, we want connection. I think the most common form that that connection takes is relationships of some sort. Either it's your relationship with your family, your relationship with your friends, relationship with your pet dog,
Mm-hmm.
your romantic partner. We're looking for connection.
Sure.
That's the most basic urge that we are ingrained with in some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're not able to fulfill our cup of connection sufficiently with these healthier and more instinctual forms of connection, we tend to search for that same connection, that same feeling good in substances or in anything else. It doesn't even have to be just alcohol. It can be drugs. It can be food.
Yeah. Exercise even.
There's like healthier manifestations of that feeling of connection, and then there's unhealthier manifestations. And I think if we can understand that and spread that interpretation of addiction, I think it's a way to remove some of the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's already not as stigmatized as it used to be.
Sure.
And I think everyone needs to find a healthy outlet for the darkness that they feel,
I agree.
instead of trying to drench the flames of darkness with substance.
Mm-hmm.
The way you described, like you're just staring at your daughter and you are in awe of her existence,
Mm-hmm.
that's an intense source of like connection right there.
Yeah.
And you also said that a motivation for you to not keep drinking was because you have this beautiful girl in
Yeah.
your life.
I want to do what I can to at least do my part to ensure that I'll be around as long as I can be for her.
Right. Yeah.
I've just been hyper motivated lately by mortality. I feel like,
By
like
mortality.
with having lost a couple of friends unexpectedly, like only a few months apart. That last friend of mine that died, I mean, he died the day before my daughter's birthday.
Mm.
And I found out from a friend about 10 minutes before my daughter's birthday party was starting.
Jesus Christ.
And I was a wreck.
Yeah.
And my daughter, I hated that my daughter brought up, 6 months later, like she asked if I was at her birthday party. And like, I was just like, oh no, like.
Wait, what happened 6 months later?
Well, I mean, like she referenced something and she's like, were you at my birthday party? And I was like, yeah, of course I was. Like she didn't remember me there because I was like on the phone with, like I was getting phone calls left and right from all these people being like, what happened? Like, and I was like a mess hiding behind sunglasses, trying not to, break down in front of everybody. But I was just like in shock. Because that was another thing, like with him leaving two little girls behind, like, and he was like he loved those kids so much. Yeah, I mean, my mom was in town for my daughter's birthday that year when it happened, and I was just like crying to her all night, just trying to process it all. And like every year on my daughter's birthday, my wife and I, we set up an email account for her when she was born, just so she'd have that Gmail address. Who knows if Gmail is going to be a thing in 20 years, but every year on her birthday, we each email her separate notes, like basically like recaps of our year with her. And like from our point of view, and like we tell her about the things that she learned to do this year and like some of the milestones and some of the things that we've done and things like that. So she can someday kind of look back on it and like just, I don't know, there's something about it. Like, and both of us end up crying every time we type these things because like we're watching our child grow up too quickly, and like, and that year that like I felt the need to like explain what happened with my friend to my daughter, my daughter in the future, like it was a hard thing to muster up a sentimental email to your kid when you're processing like the death of a friend.
Yeah.
So that was a tough one, explaining about his little girls and things like that and like how things like that are tough. And
right.
I haven't read it since then,
right.
Like I'd kind of just let them go,
yeah,
but I don't go back and read them just because it's just like more for her.
Right. That exercise to me is a prime example of the kind of connection and relationship building that you wouldn't have been able to do plausibly if you had just instead decided to numb yourself
Mhm.
with booze,
Sure.
right? Like that email might have never become a reality.
Yeah. Or it would have made far less sense.
It would have made far less sense, you know? I mean, I don't know what would have happened, but to me, it seems like the torture of having to go through those difficult emotions, you are actually able to repurpose, in some sense, that difficulty into this intimate email
hmm
to your daughter. And my guess is she's going to read that when she's older and it's going to have a profound effect on her. I mean, that's how you build connection and closeness with people, by
Mhm.
just being real and being vulnerable. So, your choice in bearing the brunt of processing difficult emotions as opposed to grabbing the bottle of whiskey to suppress it,
hmm
it's actually paving the way for this, beautiful connection that otherwise may not have happened.
Sure.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that. It's
Yeah.
important to acknowledge the value in choosing like the harder path. There needs to be some value in choosing the harder path. There needs to be some value in the process of walking on the harder path.
hmm
Otherwise, it's kind of like, okay, like, why are we doing this?
Right.
And it's easy for us as human beings to just lose sight of that like value.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to practice gratitude as
Yeah.
much as possible, just because, like,
Right.
I mean, it's so easy to forget
Right.
some of the things that you have that you're just lucky to have, especially with the speed that everything just moves.
Right.
As cliche as it sounds, I've just always, and I've been trying to teach my daughter this as well. Like, I just always try to put out there what I want to get back, I guess. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I've been telling her, like, to treat people how you want to be treated. It's just like, and I really believe in that because it just can go a long way.
Mhm.
Like, as stressful as LA traffic can get, like, and you don't want to let that guy, like, kind of merge in front of you or whatever, but, like, you never know. Like, you let him do that, maybe he'll do it for someone else, and
Mhm.
like, and then who knows how long that chain will go,
Right.
and it's like nobody's going to get anywhere if we're always just shutting each other out like that,
Right.
you know?
That's a powerful statement and very relevant in
Yeah,
today's time.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
You're a fucking great dad, dude.
Thanks.
Yeah. And just like an all around like grade A human being. Just putting that out there,
Thank
which
you.
is why I wanted to do this. So I'm glad that we did this.
Me too.
Yeah. And, thanks a lot for having this conversation with me. I hope people enjoy our talk as much as I did.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.